You won't believe what I just went through. A neighborhood Karen actually called the cops on me and tried to slap me with a $2,000 fine, all because I was hunting on my own property. $2,000. But here's the thing. She messed with the wrong guy. What she didn't know was that I have a job that's, well, we'll get to that. Let's just say the ending is so satisfying I still laugh about it. Stick around. You'll be saying, serves her right by the time it's done. And, hey, let me know where you're watching from. This is going to be one wild ride. The day started off almost too peaceful. It was a Tuesday morning, and the October air was perfectly crisp. I sat on my back porch sipping fresh orange juice, watching deer stroll across my yard like they owned it. My house backs onto a forest preserve, so wildlife isn't unusual, but that morning felt different, like the calm before a storm. Looking back, I should have taken that as a warning. I'm Eric Johnson, 32, and I've lived here for about 3 years. It's not a mansion, but it sits on 5 acres of land, exactly what I was after: peace, space, and the freedom to enjoy what I love without stepping on anyone's toes. Or so I thought. My house is tucked at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, surrounded by tall oaks that give just the right amount of cover. I picked this place because it felt like a sanctuary, a place to disconnect from the chaos of the world. It was the start of hunting season, something I'd been eagerly waiting for. But I'm not the careless type. I do things by the book. My rifle was inspected, scope dialed in, and I headed out to the preserve. About an hour in, I spotted a deer near my dirt backstop, a huge mound I built myself over 2 weekends for. Safety. Beyond it, just miles of trees. I was field dressing the deer when I heard a voice screeching through the trees. "What do you think you're doing?" The voice was shrill, furious, and coming in fast. A woman came barreling through the brush, hair tangled, face red, looking like she was about to explode. I stayed calm. This was my land, after all. I'd never actually met this neighbor before, though I had seen her speeding around in her car at odd hours. This was our first face-to-face. She was furious, not even trying to listen. I tried being polite. "Good morning to you too." I introduced myself and explained I was hunting legally with the right permits, hoping to clear up whatever misunderstanding had triggered her. But it was clear she wasn't interested in being neighborly. She looked at me like I'd just committed a crime. "Legal?" she shrieked, her voice reaching new heights. "You're endangering this entire community. This is a neighborhood, not a Wild West shooting range." She was trembling with rage, jabbing her finger at me like I just threatened her family. Before I could respond, she whipped out her phone. "I'm calling the police. And the HOA, you'll be dragged out of here soon enough." And off she stormed, dialing as she stomped back toward her house. I just stood there for a minute, unsure if I should laugh or actually be concerned. Was this really happening? Sure enough, within 30 minutes, a patrol car rolled into my driveway. Officer Martinez stepped out looking like he'd seen one too. Many HOA meltdowns for a single day. Credit to him, though he was cool-headed. I showed him my license, permits, the boundary maps, and even the backstop I had constructed. He nodded approvingly. "Sir, your setup looks completely within safety guidelines," he said, taking a few notes. "Maybe give your neighbors a heads up next time, just out of courtesy." Fair enough. I probably should have mentioned something beforehand, but at least the officer was reasonable. As he drove away, I wasn't upset. I was intrigued. That woman's reaction had been too extreme to be about noise alone. She came in swinging without any attempt at understanding. Her name? Rebecca. I found that out a few days later when a thick envelope showed up in my mailbox. It was from the HOA, a packet thick enough to be someone's memoir. I assumed it was the usual notices about landscaping or trash day. Instead, it was a $2,000 fine, Violation of community safety and noise ordinances, $2,000. For 3 shots on my land, I burst out laughing. This couldn't be real. The notice was signed by Rebecca Gray, the same woman from the woods, so she wasn't just a Karen. She was the HOA president. She cited repeated violations documented over 60 days, complete with photo evidence. Apparently, she'd been tracking me. Her letter read like she was trying to evict me from the planet, and the language? It didn't sound official. It sounded made up. I called the HOA office. The woman who answered Amanda sounded nervous, like she was scared just to be on the phone. Mr. Johnson? I just handle paperwork. Mrs. Gray manages enforcement. She says you have 7 days to pay. Something wasn't right. What specific rule did I break? I asked. Long pause. I'll need to ask Mrs. Gray and get back to you, she mumbled before hanging up. That was my cue. I dug into high law. Permits, enforcement protocol, everything. And what I found? Yeah, Rebecca had messed up. Big time. HOAs can't fine you without a process. Notice, time to correct, a hearing. She skipped all of that. Not only that, but she had been documenting my hunting habits for months. She was building a case. Problem was, it wasn't a legal one. It was personal. So I started documenting everything. Every email, every letter, every call. I labeled the folder Rebecca Gray Documentation, Day 1. A few days later, I got hold of the HOA's internal records. Amanda, reluctantly but legally bound, handed them over. That's when the real corruption came to light. HOA funds listed under community landscaping improvements were spent on Rebecca's private lawn. Road maintenance improved only her driveway. Security systems? Installed on her house. She was embezzling, but it didn't stop there. I looked into her background. 3 previous harassment lawsuits, all from former neighborhoods. She lost every case. One even ended in a restraining order. Then Amanda called me again, this time from her personal number. Mr. Johnson, I can't do this anymore. Rebecca's been forcing me to forge meeting minutes, fake board signatures, and create made-up violations. I have proof. Can we meet? We met at a coffee shop far from the neighborhood. She was terrified, constantly glancing over her shoulder. She handed me a flash drive. It had everything: emails, photos, forged documents, proof of years of manipulation, even surveillance of my hunting schedule, time-stamped and organized. Amanda confessed every violation, every fine, every board decision. It's all fake. I can't be a part of it anymore. That was it. I had everything I needed. Rebecca wanted to play games? She had no idea who she was up against. The longer I thought about it, the more it hit me. This wasn't just about my land. It was about her grip on the whole neighborhood. That evening, I stayed up combing through every file on that flash drive. What I uncovered made one thing clear. This went far beyond a hunting violation. Rebecca Gray had essentially turned the HOA into a front for a criminal operation. Embezzling funds, forging paperwork, intimidating residents, and manufacturing fake legal documents to support her threats. And now, I had irrefutable proof. Email trails where she demanded money for made-up violations. Faked signatures on spending approvals that only benefited her. Board minutes claiming votes that never even took place. I sat back, taking in the massive pile of evidence scattered across my desk. Rebecca Gray, I muttered into the empty room. You've been running a racket for 2 years. But every criminal slips up, and you made yours the moment you targeted me. As I stared at the files in front of me, a knock rang out. I already knew who it was. Rebecca had come for the next round, and this time, it wasn't going to be about a simple fine. I started to question if this battle was bigger than I'd anticipated. But one thing was sure, I wasn't walking away. She'd been tormenting the entire community for too long. Someone needed to end it. After poring through more legal files, I finally found what I needed, an error in the HOA's own records that made Rebecca's actions not just overreaching, but outright illegal. I had her. I decided to completely ignore the fine she'd slapped on me, and that silence? It drove her nuts. She'd invested months into tracking supposed violations, watching my every move, and I gave her nothing. No payment. No reply. No acknowledgement that her absurd claim meant anything. For someone used to people snapping to attention, my silence must have been infuriating. Days passed. Then things took a darker turn. Weird doesn't even begin to describe it. Disturbing fits better. Rebecca's reaction to being ignored escalated into what I can only call full-blown stalking. The drive-bys weren't new. I realized she'd been doing them for months, but now they were relentless and shameless. She'd slow roll past my house dozens of times a day, craning her neck to peer inside. Sometimes she'd just sit in her car, parked out front, staring at my house like she was waiting for me to mess up. The constant feeling of being watched was suffocating. I tried to act natural, but deep down, I knew this wouldn't end quietly. Then, it got worse. She started stepping out of her car, camera in hand, creeping toward my property line. I could hear the shutter clicks echoing as she took photos, evidence for some scheme I hadn't yet figured out. I'd be doing everyday things, gardening, washing my truck, and there she'd be, standing just at the edge of my yard, snapping photos with a long-range lens like I was some criminal or public figure. The camera clicks became so common I started adjusting my schedule around them. But it didn't stop there. After a particularly stormy night, I stepped out to check on my garden and noticed muddy footprints, high heels, in the rough terrain of my backyard. Following the trail, I saw they'd gone all over past my equipment, my garage windows, even my target area. Rebecca had trespassed on foot onto my land in the middle of the night. I couldn't sit back anymore. I grabbed my phone and started recording everything. But this time, I also called the cops and notified them of the harassment. Then I reached out to a lawyer and contacted a former HOA member who had once clashed with Rebecca. It was time to fight back. That's when Rebecca changed tactics and started using city departments as weapons. Over the next week, I got surprise visits from inspectors. Code enforcement claimed my lawn was too tall, laughable, given how well kept it was. Zoning claimed my parked truck blocked public access, despite being in my own driveway. A business license inspector accused me of running a company from my house. I WSN single quotes T. Each inspector said the same thing. The complaints were bogus, but they had to follow up. Realizing I was under siege, I called Amanda. Not only did she confirm everything, she sent over emails, documents, and even accusations Rebecca had fabricated. Amanda wasn't just a source now, she was a teammate in this war. Then the police returned. Officer Martinez looked exhausted. "Mr. Johnson," he said, "Mrs. Gray claims you made death threats. What's going on?" I was pressure washing my driveway when he arrived. "Death threats?" I asked, genuinely stunned. "Officer, I haven't spoken to her since we first met." I pointed down the street. "But she's been photographing me from her car for hours." He glanced down the road. Sure enough, Rebecca's car was right there. "So what would you do in my shoes? Keep taking it or push back?" I was beyond tired of this. Martinez gave Rebecca a warning about false reports. And wouldn't you know it, she had the gall to approach my fence again. This time, though, her attitude had shifted, smug and confident, like she held a hidden card. I met her at the fence, and something in me changed. My patience froze into something sharper. "Rebecca," I said, meeting her stare, "you're digging a hole you can't climb out of." And for the first time, I saw real fear flicker in her eyes. she sneered. "You think I'm afraid of your phone?" She stepped back but added, "I'm not letting this go, Eric." She walked off, but this fight was just getting started. I turned to action. Just as I grabbed my phone to call my lawyer, the doorbell rang. Rebecca stood there, smugly handing me a court summons. It was on. Without wasting time, I went to the courthouse and filed my countersuit. The next morning, I called William Parker, an attorney specializing in HOA law. I laid everything out: Amanda's flash drive, the photos, the police visits. He spent 2 hours reviewing it all, occasionally shaking his head or letting out a low whistle. Finally, he looked up. "Eric," he said, "this isn't just HOA drama. She's committed embezzlement, harassment, forgery, trespassing. This is criminal." I already suspected it, but hearing him say it made it real. "Jail time?" I asked. "Potentially. But we need airtight proof." "I know how to get it," I said. "Just be ready when I call." We mapped out a legal strategy. That afternoon, I bought professional-grade surveillance cameras 4K with audio and TIMESTANPs. As I installed them, I noticed a shadow at the edge of my property. Rebecca. Again, I set the cameras in hidden spots, covering every entry point. I created a bait area with some hunting gear just in view. If she was going to trespass, I'd be ready. That night, Amanda called. "Eric, I found something." This could take Rebecca down for good. She wasn't a bystander anymore, she was a key ally. 2 days later, she called again, sounding shaken. She's ranting about a $10,000 emotional damage lawsuit. Says she has months of evidence. She's out to destroy you. Then Amanda's voice dropped to a whisper. "She keeps saying she'll eliminate the problem permanently. I think she's planning something dangerous." I thanked her and hung up, but her words echoed in my mind. Eliminate the problem permanently. I opened my wallet and pulled out a federal ID badge I hadn't shown anyone. "Rebecca," I said quietly, "you have no idea what necessary means really looks like." I double-checked all the cameras and organized every piece of evidence. This wasn't just a trap. It was her complete destruction executed perfectly. That night, I got a message from Amanda. "She's coming tomorrow. Be ready." I reviewed the footage one last time and called my lawyer. At 5 a.m. I watched from my kitchen window as Rebecca crept onto my property like she was in a spy movie. Dressed in black, holding bolt cutters, a hammer, and a massive sign, she walked along the side of the house like some suburban commando, and everything, every illegal act, was captured in flawless 4K. She clipped 20 feet of my fence. Step by step, snap, snap. Then she hammered the oversized sign into my lawn. "No hunting zone. Violators will be prosecuted by HOA." She was claiming my property as hers. Totally insane and completely illegal. But she wasn't done. She called 911, pretending to be the victim. "Eric Johnson is violating the HOA rules. I need help." Standing in the wreckage she just made, demanding my arrest. Amanda called moments later. "Eric, we have it. Proof the HOA funneled money to Rebecca's personal account. It's over." Then Officer Martinez arrived. I could see the fatigue written all over his face before he even stepped out of the patrol car. The poor guy looked like he was rethinking every decision that led him to fielding petty neighborhood squabbles. He spotted me calmly seated on my porch, a book in one hand, a mug of coffee in the other, just another quiet Tuesday. The contrast between my peaceful posture and Rebecca's frenzied arm-waving must have been jarring. She was in my backyard, gesturing like mad, pointing dramatically at the illegal sign she'd hammered into my lawn as if it were damning evidence of some heinous crime. "Mrs. Gray," Martinez called, his tone laced with exhaustion. "What's the emergency here exactly?" His eyes scanned the wrecked fence. the outrageous sign, and then flicked back to me calmly enjoying my book. You could almost see the wheels turning in his head, trying to make sense of it all. He's violating the hunting ban. Rebecca shrieked, jabbing her finger toward me like I was armed and dangerous. Her voice had reached that high, strained pitch that only came when someone was rapidly unraveling. "That sign proves it," she added. Martinez looked from her, to me, to the sign, and back again. His eyebrows knit together in confusion. "Ma'am," he said, voice steady but incredulous. He's reading a book. "What exactly is the violation here?" I closed my book, stood up slowly, and approached with deliberate calm. "Today's a little different, Officer Martinez," I said, "because now I have evidence, and it proves exactly who's actually breaking the law." Rebecca's face blanched. For the first time, I saw actual fear in her eyes. This wasn't just about standing firm anymore. It was time to strike back. I invited Martinez inside and pulled up the security footage on my computer. The recordings were clear and damning Rebecca cutting through my fence, planting her ridiculous sign, all with precise timestamps showing it occurred moments before her 911 call. Martinez leaned forward, absorbing the footage. Then he glanced out the window at Rebecca, who still lingered near her mess. The understanding settled on his face, followed by a look of weary disappointment. When we stepped outside again, he called her over. "Ma'am," he said, "I need you to explain this footage." Rebecca marched over, indignant, demanding to see the video. When I replayed it for her in crystal clear detail, I watched her entire world begin to crumble. "That's fake," she screamed, her voice trembling. "He manipulated it." Martinez remained calm. "Ma'am, this is multi-angle, time-stamped footage from a security system. It clearly shows you vandalizing Mr. Johnson's property." But I wasn't done. "Before we talk vandalism charges, there's something else you need to know," I told Martinez. We stepped inside for a private word, leaving Rebecca fuming on the porch. What I told him shifted everything. I watched his posture stiffen as the gravity of it all hit. Before I could call Amanda, the doorbell rang again. I opened the door to find Rebecca flanked by a group of officers. She held up a paper, smugly. "We have a warrant for your arrest," she declared. "Obstruction of justice." But when we stepped outside again, her expression faltered. She could sense something had changed. "Mrs. Gray," Martinez said, voice firm and professional, "there's something you need to understand about the man you've been harassing." She smirked, clearly confident she had won. That smirk faded quickly as I reached into my wallet. "You made a serious mistake," I said. Pulling out my badge. Her face went white. I held out my credentials for Martinez, who immediately straightened. "Eric Johnson," I said, "Federal Wildlife Officer with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. My hunting activities on this property are federally authorized, as this land borders a federal wildlife preserve." Martinez's eyes widened. "Sir, I had no idea." Meanwhile, Rebecca strained to hear. She recognized the words Federal Wildlife Officer, and her confidence shattered. She stumbled backward, nearly collapsing into a chair. "You're lying," she muttered weakly. But the panic in her voice betrayed her disbelief. Martinez nodded solemnly. I continued, "Mrs. Gray hasn't just harassed a private citizen. She's interfered with a federal officer, damaged property adjacent to protected land, and filed false reports against law enforcement. These are serious federal offenses." That's when my lawyer, William Parker, arrived, documents in hand. Furthermore, William said, spreading files across my table, "Mrs. Gray has embezzled over $7,000 from the HOA, forged documents, and has prior incidents of harassment." The evidence was overwhelming. Rebecca's bravado dissolved completely. She wasn't facing a fine anymore. She was facing federal prosecution. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "I'm the HOA president. I make the rules." But even she knew. It sounded hollow. I stepped closer. "You don't run anything anymore. You've broken the law, and now it's time to answer for it." Martinez turned to her. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for vandalism, harassment, false reporting, and obstruction of a federal officer." The sound of those cuffs clicking shut was pure satisfaction. The fallout was immediate. Within 24 hours, an emergency HOA board meeting removed her from office. Federal charges were filed. The HOA demanded repayment of the stolen funds. I filed a civil suit for $15,000 in damages. She was hit with a 5-year restraining order. Other victims came forward. The FBI opened a criminal probe. Rebecca Gray's empire collapsed overnight. Amanda took over as interim HOA president and reversed every oppressive rule Rebecca had passed. Neighbors started talking again, sharing stories of Rebecca's tyranny, fines for kids' chalk art, banning flags, bullying seniors over grass length, and funneling HOA money into her own backyard. The neighborhood finally felt free. Laughter returned. Kids played. Gardens grew. 1 week later, I sat on my porch, sipping orange juice and watching deer graze. No cameras, no drama. Just peace. Amanda sent a text. "Thank you for freeing us. We're throwing a neighborhood BBQ, and you're the guest of honor." I glanced at my security cameras and gave a small smile. Never underestimate the quiet neighbor. Rebecca Gray thought she could intimidate anyone, but she never bothered to find out who I really was. I raised my glass in a silent toast. Here's to justice and to teaching tyrants about real consequences. She thought she was untouchable. She was wrong. Now my mailbox holds thank you notes, not threats. The fence she destroyed, rebuilt, stronger. The HOA, transparent and fair under Amanda. Rebecca, sitting in federal custody, facing multiple felonies. Justice took time, but when it arrived, it was perfect.